Season 2, Episode 3, Gone Mental. Welcome. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Kristy.
Today we're going to talk about how to assess a psychiatrist, or why not every health professional deserves a place in your mental health treatment plan. Kristy.
I've had probably 20 or so psychiatrists.
That's 20 people.
Roughly, since I was first diagnosed with bipolar around 13 years ago.
That's nearly one every 6 months.
And since I had periods where I wasn't seeing a psychiatrist at all, it's actually more than that. When I was through Blacktown Mental Health for a few years, I was getting a new psychiatrist every visit. I was entitled to go see a psychiatrist there every 3 months, and I went diligently because I didn't want to get sick for over a year after I'd had a significant relapse in my life. But because I was getting a new one every 3 months, I didn't get to know their names, and the lack of continuity of care was a big hurdle in my mental health treatment.
Kristy was a trainer of psychiatrists.
They were all interns, and the biggest one tip to me that I knew a psychiatrist wasn't very good was if they said to me, "So, you must be manic," on the first time of meeting me, because they assessed on the speed of which I spoke that I definitely had to be manic.
Is that how they worked it out?
And I find that offensive, because they didn't know me well enough to make that assessment. And most of the time when they said, "Are you manic?" I wasn't manic. So I found that very presumptuous. And some of them didn't even ask. They were just like, "So you're manic?" And I'd be, "No, I'm not manic."
Maybe they just said that to every patient.
Maybe they did, but I think it would be pretty obvious if somebody was depressed. Don't think you would be asking them if they're manic. But this, for me, was an indication, one of the indications of whether a psychiatrist was very good or not. Eventually, I left Blacktown Mental Health and went back to managing my mental health with a GP. I'm now chosen to be under the treatment of a private psychiatrist. Not all of us are lucky enough to be able to afford a private psychiatrist, but for me, it was about having choice in my treatment and being able to hire or fire my psychiatrist based on how I feel they performed.
Okay.
What would you say, Andrew?
Now, it is possible to find a good psychiatrist in the public system.
Yes.
But you need to be prepared to do some research, spend a fair bit of time on it, and maybe try out 1 to several. That's another option.
Sometimes in the public system, one of the biggest hard parts is you don't always get a choice of who your psychiatrist is. Whereas in the private system, you do get a choice. If you can get, there are some very good psychiatrists in the public system. Most of the psychiatrists in the private system were at one stage in the public system. And some work in both the public and the private system. But having a private psychiatrist is the choice I've made for me for the time being. What we say for psychiatrists also goes well for GPs. There are some GPs that know a great deal about mental illness, and there are some GPs that don't.
Well, know nothing at all, or actually harmful.
Yes.
There are some who don't want to learn, some who learn but don't pick it up, and some on the other end who are very good. For instance, the GP who helped me to get diagnosed, he was excellent.
I'm just trying to think of what else we can say on this, how to assess one. For any health professional you're seeing, it's the health professional's duty to be the one that creates rapport with you. Most of these professionals need to be able to develop rapport. Andrew would know a bit about developing rapport with a client based on his training as a hypnotherapist. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, it's quite important. It's not actually critical, but the better.
It's critical.
Kristy does think You don't have to whisper, Kristy.
I think
Speak
it's
up.
critical, so
You
I
think-
disagree.
You think it's critical?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In theory, it shouldn't be. However, it is important. If you have some way of easily relating to someone as a patient, then communication is better. And if communication is better, then issues are discussed more clearly. Now, Kristy clearly had problems with communication with some of these initial psychiatrists that she talked to. And I get the impression rapport wasn't necessarily there at all in some of those cases.
Some of it might have been my attitude, because once they said to me, "So you're manic," I was really of the mind that this person's a bit of an idiot.
But that's not a good way of building rapport. I mean,
No.
that's the opposite, I would think.
I found it offensive that somebody would judge my state because I have a label of bipolar without knowing me as a human being. So that's why I found that so offensive. I believe that rapport is critical, because if you lack rapport with your psychiatrist, you're not going to be honest. It's harder to be honest with somebody that you have no rapport with. I think that part of the patient relationship, and there is the saying that we should all be called consumers, but when it comes to doctors, we're still, a psychiatrist is a doctor, it's still a patient relationship.
Yeah.
I want somebody in my treatment program who sees me first as a human being, not only as a label, who respects me and is kind to me. And one of the psychiatrists I saw at Blacktown Mental Health was absolutely amazing. I will never forget him, because I was very upset at the stage. I'd broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and I was very upset. And he said to me, he talked to me about it. I said to him, "I should be over it by now. It's been a couple of months." And he said, "It doesn't matter how long you were together. It doesn't matter how many months it's been since you've broken up. It's what the relationship meant to you." And he actually said something to me about his own life. He said, "I was very hurt when I had a very short relationship with somebody, because they meant a lot to me. Now, if I had given the option, I would have continued to go see him, because in that disclosure, he forged a connection where he saw me as more than just bipolar."
And that's a very good example of how to really build rapport with the patient.
Yeah, it was a really, but because I was under Blacktown Mental Health at the time and it was an intern, I was only allowed to see him once. So now that I'm with a private psychiatrist, I really like my private psychiatrist, but I have some doubts. I'm not sure whether I'm going to go back to him or get a second opinion, but that's one of the pleasures of having the money to be in the private system, is I get to make the choice. And
The choice when you want to.
yeah, and I get the choice of whether I see him or I see somebody else. If I don't choose to go to anyone at all, that's still my choice. If I choose to manage with my GP only, like I've chosen before in the past, because I have a very, very good relationship with my GP. And I think we need choices. And if you feel that your psychiatrist in any way makes you feel uncomfortable, then it's time to try the best you can within your capacity to find a new psychiatrist. We are their bosses.
Yeah, and there are ways of doing that. One thing that Kristy and I both know about is it's all too easy to just fall into a state of disempowerment, especially when you're in the system. I gather, very especially when you've been involuntarily committed. It's all too easy to think, oh well, I'll just let myself be pushed around. To have choices is, what would you say it is? I can't think of the word.
I think it's actually a primary importance to being a functioning adult human being. There's nothing more disempowering, nothing that will make you feel more worthless than to have no choice. And it's about having your autonomy.
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the ways I recommend, if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of choice because of your involuntary or anything, about if you can actually make a complaint about your psychiatrist, And I do recommend asking to make a formal complaint if they've done anything that has hurt you. If you do that, then you're more likely to be able to request a new psychiatrist. Even if they don't take your complaint seriously, you could still get a new psychiatrist on the grounds that you've made a complaint against your old psychiatrist, and therefore you feel that you will be judged and treated differently because of your complaint.
No, this is something to be put on for a future episode. We need to do at least, I think, 2 on how to formally complain and do it effectively. Because so many people just go about it the wrong way and they get nothing or they end up worse. There are effective ways to complain, and we'll tell you.
Yep, so that's a follow-up episode.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add on this, Andrew?
I think that'll do for today. Okay.
Oh, before we leave, we want to give out a shout to Bipolar Australia.
Yes, that's right.
On the 30th of March
Yes.
is Bipolar Day, International Bipolar Day.
Every year.
Yeah. And Bipolar Australia is holding an event in Sydney. We will have a link to their website in the notes. And Andrew will be going. I will probably be in Melbourne, so I won't be able to attend this year. But I was a guest speaker last year. Last year was the first time we had a Bipolar Australia event, and it's pretty exciting.
Yes. Sounds good. Okay. Episode 3, the end.
Thank
See
you
soon.
very much. Thank you for listening. Bye.